Hello my friends, I'm Professor Hans von Puppet here today for Modern Gaming RoundUp. Are you tired of retro gaming? I know I am. I can't tell you how tired I am of listening to other podcasts prattle on about Pac-Man or Space Invaders. Well, my good friends at Modern Gaming RoundUp have come up with a brand spanking new podcast. Go to www.moderngamingroundup.com to see how they can take care of all your modern gaming needs.
Hey listeners, it's Dave and I'm here with Sparklepus, and this month we've been playing a little game called Devil Engine, made by Protoculture Games and localised and published by Dangen Entertainment. I think both teams are out of Japan, and it is a typical 2D left to right scrolling space shooter. I'd seen some gameplay footage of it and thought it looked right up our alleys, and I know Sparklepus also likes a good shooter. So I reached out to Dangen and they were happy to supply us both a little code so we could play it and share our thoughts with you.
This is one that, I haven't heard about, and one of the things that's interesting is, there's so many new retro games that don't really fit the mold of what we traditionally cover, so we thought this was a good little segment that we could bring some games to you guys that, maybe you'd be interested in playing that aren't 20 plus years old. There's so many of them that obviously, how do you find out about them? If you're not perusing the store or a friend doesn't tell you, it's not like old days where you see something on a store shelf. So sometimes things can kind of miss you, and this is one that I just hadn't heard about for whatever reason, but I'm really glad that Dave brought it to my attention. I've had a lot of fun playing it.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, that about visibility. Just recently we had the Games BAFTAs in the UK, and there were a bunch of indie games in there that loads of my mates in my game dev friends chat that we have, they were going, I've never heard of this, how have I not heard of half of these games? And they're all sort of games that were within the last 12 months, and some of them pretty much 10 or 11, 12 months old, and they're just like, why have these not come across? And I think there is just an element of, depending on what coverage you're looking at and things like that, some of them are just going to slip you by. And I certainly try my hardest to keep an eye out for anything interesting and put feelers out to publishers, but yeah, there's so many games now on Steam, and the Switch has just exploded with indie titles, and a lot of them are you're doing the sort of the retro style, the 16-bit, 8-bit pixel graphics that's kind of in vogue. We're starting to see some sort of interesting PlayStation-esque early 3D stuff coming along as well. So like Simon Butler likes to do as well, it's good to get the word out on these games, because, you guys probably get a kick out of a lot of these. They're not much difference to actually playing sort of a retro title, other than some of them will throw in a few more modern niceties, like a little bit friendlier game design practices that we've learnt since then and things like that.
This one is available on Steam. Steam's one of the best places to find indie games, but we're playing it on the Nintendo Switch. I think the Switch is, like you said, it's become a great place to find a lot of these new independent games. This one isn't available on Xbox or PS4. It may become available at some point, but yeah, we both played it on the Switch.
While we're on that, so it's about 15 quid in the UK on both. And did you say it was sort of $20 US?
$20 on the Switch, yeah.
So, it's in a kind of I suppose it's kind of maybe a more expensive end of a sort of a shortish indie game, but it's not horrific, I guess. And both platforms have decent sales, so there's every chance it's going to sort of go down to half that at some point if you're kind of on the fence about it. How about your first impressions then, Sparkle? I'd seen gameplay footage, but then sort of booting it up, the intro, it just felt, straight away I could tell there was a lot of sort of time and attention and put into the intro animation, and it had a bit of a Metal Slug feel to it, that sort of Neo-Geo sort of animation, but also a bit of maybe TurboGrafx CD sort of style thing going on.
I went to the publisher site to kind of read a little bit more about how they describe the game, and they kind of talk about this being the best of 32-bit graphics gameplay, rolled into a new modern shooter. And I think that kind of describes it quite well. This definitely reminds me of the Metal Slug, like you said, the graphic style, but also some anime, late 90s anime, some of the design elements that they've used. Maybe some of those Capcom games, and I think some of the team had come from Capcom or worked with Capcom localization in the past. So you can kind of see those influences of Capcom's Fighters, Darkstalkers type vibe to it. Do you pick some of that up?
Yeah, I mean the studio, by the looks of if you search for just sort of Protoculture and the name, you get a lot of results from Macross wikis like Robotech Saga stuff, because it's an energy source in there. So I'm guessing they've probably named themselves after that, and you get a very much an anime, and I think that's why it sort of reminded me of TurboGrafx-16 CD animation, because there was a lot of manga influenced animation, and graphic style games released on that system. So yeah, I guess that's where this kind of bold, not like fully cartoony, but it's kind of bold shaded primary colours, sort of thick outlines, but the amount of like the lavish animation on the explosions and the enemies and everything. There's just so much detail going on, and then the backgrounds look like fantastic. They remind me of like the really nice detailed backgrounds you get on Neo-Geo games. Plenty of colour in there, plenty of resolution, compared to, sort of SNES, Mega Drive 16-bit stuff where you had limited palettes and things. You had memory limitations, you had a definite jump on the Neo Geo, and it was something that you always wanted from like the PlayStation and Saturn, but especially Sony pushing more 3D stuff and sort of rejecting a lot of 2D games that were submitted to them. You never sort of got to see what an amazing 16 million bit color palette 2D game could fully be like. And I feel with this you're getting that kind of philosophy come across, and they've just taken the 2D pixel games, and they've not gone crazy because they've got power, but they've got enough power to just make that fully realized into not worry about having to sort of worry about memory limits, like I say, on frames of animation and things like that. They've just been able to put as much time and effort as they can possibly put in. Small team, small amount of artists, not an unlimited budget by any certain means. So there's limits there, but certainly you can see how the hardware has not had to hold them back.
I would say that this, even though it's $20, maybe a little bit premium for an indie game, by no means does this feel budget. This feels like this was fleshed out by a full team, a big studio. This reminds me of what would be a AAA game from that era. I don't feel like they kind of phoned it in with some of the background tiles just repeating over and over again. The enemies feel pretty varied. I've played some other shooters before where you're like, okay, this was put together by a small team, it's enjoyable, but the graphics on this thing are just killer. I mean, the stages are well varied. The explosions, the animations, you feel like you are getting a AAA game for sure. For a shooter, kind of keeping it within that context. But I was blown away by the graphics, to be honest. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's definitely something that if this had come out and it was developed by Treasure and published by Konami, and it had that kind of budget and effort put into it, you wouldn't have been surprised. Back in the day, it's got that kind of feel to it. The things that set apart Dynamite Headdy and Gunstar Heroes and some of the Thunder Force games as well. The really accomplished 2D shoot 'em up action game stuff. It's got all the hallmarks of that. It's a really well put together package. Certainly very impressive. Made a good impression on me, that's for sure. So how did you find like the music and the audio and stuff?
The music is pulse pounding. It's pretty much cranking the whole time. I love that they have the cues and things like that when you're approaching a mini boss or one of the end bosses. It kind of flashes up, emergency.
Like the whole kind of Darius kind of warning a huge enemy is approaching sort of thing.
Yeah, so let's kind of peel back a little bit. It's a single-player game. I would have loved if this could have been 2-player at the same time. I think it would have made the game a little bit easier. My one rub against it is like, God, I just wish I could have a co-pilot at sometimes because it is tough. You get 3 different weapons. One of the gameplay elements, you can get homing bullets, spread shot, or laser. You're able to upgrade all of your weapons by collecting more of the orbs that are labeled, homing missile or homing laser or spread. And as you grab them, your shots get larger, kind of traditional, like a lot of shooters. If you get hit, you kind of knock down a level from what you had. There are no shields, but there's what they call a burst. So you hit the burst, you can kind of absorb bullets. I don't believe that you can absorb some of the big laser blasts that come from some of the boss or mini boss elements. Then you also have a bomb, which depending on which type of shot you have is going to be a little bit different. Either a straightforward burst of missiles, sort of homing missiles, or another move if you have the laser where you kind of spin around and shoot out some giant lasers. So there's not a whole lot going on as far as different variables that you're upgrading your ship with. You also have 3 levels of speed that you can control at any time, so you can kind of have slow, medium, or very fast. I found myself typically playing at the number 2 level. I felt like 1 was too slow and 3 was a little bit too fast for me.
Yeah, that was definitely my thoughts. Sometimes I like 1 for some fine control if I'm sort of trying to navigate through a bit of a tight space. There's some levels where I end up quite close to the ground or the ceiling, and sometimes 1's nicer there, but then you really do need at least 2 to be able to dodge through some of the bullet patterns and enemies. But 3 was just it was just a bit too twitchy for me. And then in terms of the weapons, I feel like in something like Thunder Force, there definitely feels like some stages suit some weaponry better. Certainly for me anyway. So there's a section in stage 1 where you're kind of going through a tunnel that's going up and down, and some of the enemies get sort of blocked by the floor, as you're navigating around. So there, like the homing bullets are really useful because you'll shoot them out and it will go round. But there's definitely sort of cases like stage 2, the homing bullets don't really seem powerful enough to clear out the enemies quite as fast as you need. So the spread there is sort of a lot more powerful and seems to just churn through them. But then sort of I found then carrying that through into stage 3, there's the one where when you start going through the forest and you've got trees trunks sticking up, like that's again blocking a lot of the spread shots. I've sort of ended up switching to the homing there. And so I don't know how you felt, if you're sort of favouring one or another, or are you sort of using them depending on the level context as well?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say there's definitely some strategy involved in which weapon you want to go. And then the other thing is you can hit the burst button, which is basically your absorb shield. You can't spam that, so you have to be strategic about how often you use it. If there's tons of bullets coming at you, you kind of have to hit the timing. I'd say there's maybe a 3-second delay before you can kind of hit it again. And you can use the burst to, so if one of the orbs is coming at you, and let's say it's homing and you don't want homing, you can hit the burst and it'll switch the type of weapon again. So I found myself, I kind of figured that out later on, and found myself using some strategy, saying like, okay, I'm gonna switch to this. But I primarily roll with the spread weapon because I feel like it's the medium power weapon and gives me good coverage for enemies on the screen. I do use the homing when you're going through some narrow corridors, and trying to get those shots is a little bit more difficult, but it is a little bit underpowered, so I don't really use the laser too much. Just feel like it doesn't give me enough coverage.
I always find laser weapons like that difficult for my skill level, because you've got the laser option in like Gradius, because I'm sort of, a lot of my movement is based around I'm trying to avoid the fuck out of everything. And I'm fine. I haven't got the mental capacity to be trying to work out which is the best route for me to take the ship to avoid things, but also pinpoint accurate. Because with the laser you've got to be pretty damn accurate. You're only shooting in one straight line, so being able to avoid stuff and shoot the right parts as well of everything that's incoming that's definitely beyond my capacity at the moment.
Well, one of the things I'll say about this is, I mean, this is hard. This is not a cakewalk game, but I never felt like it was completely unfair. One of the things I enjoyed about this game is, when you die, it's not like it starts you all the way at the beginning of the level again. You're limited on lives and continues. There's 2 different main modes. You can either start off with very hard or easy, which is still very, very hard.
Yeah.
At least for me. I typically like playing these types of games. If it's an arcade, I like playing, with a regular joystick, but on home console, I've just always enjoyed a D-pad. I feel like I get a little bit more precision for whatever reason. And the analog stick on the Switch, to me, is just a little bit loose and gummy. So I feel, I don't know, that's one hang-up I have with it is just the inputs. So when I'm playing on my TV, I feel like I have better control than if I'm playing the Switch handheld. The D-pad is just shit. It's not even really a D-pad on the Switch, so I kind of have to play it with the stick. I find it a little bit difficult to play in handheld version. How about you?
Well, I've definitely been playing it mostly with a Pro controller, which has then got the actual D-pad on it. But something I found with handheld, versus some other things, is something I thought when I first got to stage 3, I was just like, holy fuck, this is just like you. I still do feel that it's got a lot going on. Like, it's throwing out a lot of bullets. It's not quite a full bullet, some of the more insane full bullet hell sort of things, but it's not kind of, your Gradius R type, sort of a bit less on screen. It's kind of a balance in the middle, and it didn't really feel unfair. Still doesn't, but I thought it might have done it a bit when I first got to stage 3, and I was just really struggling with it. I was crashing into the tree stumps. There's like a pre-warning on the early part of it where there's a sort of a mechanical dragon sort of thing flying around in the background, and that's shooting at things from the background into the foreground to try and hit you. And then similar after that, there's like this wavy laser, sort of almost like laser wind that attack that it must be it that's doing from off screen, and it gives you a heads up on that. Sort of this like fast animation graphic that shows you where that's going to take a path through the screen so you can position yourself. But I was really struggling when I first got there, and I was playing at the time on my PC monitor, and I'm sort of fairly close to it, and it's sort of 24-inch screen, and I was really struggling. And then I sort of picked it up handheld, and that, apart from the weird 4-button cluster rather than D-pad, that seemed better, and I was doing better at that time. But then docked and on the telly in the living room, and sort of sitting a bit further, it's a much bigger screen obviously, but I'm sitting that bit further away. I think it then puts it in a similar situation to the handheld, where I can cover more of the screen, comfortably with my eyes, and I can actually think what's going on. I think I was that much closer and that much more absorbed when I was at my desk, that I was these tells in the periphery of my vision weren't quite coming through. So there's definitely an element there of sort of being able to sort of sit back and take it all in. So that, for the different styles of play that the Switch offers, that's a definite consideration. If I'd had it on Steam, I would have, whether I'd have ended up playing it downstairs on the Steam Link and been comfortable, or just tried it upstairs and just struggled with it, I don't know. But yeah, control-wise, like the actual D-pad, I struggled for a while with getting the right buttons layout. It took me, I don't know why, but it took me a little bit to get used to it. And I tried with so you've got actions mapped to the 4 face buttons, your burst mode, the bomb salvo, sort of special weapon salvo, and your normal shot. But then you've also got alternatives for them on the triggers. And I did wonder if, maybe it'd be easier to dodge with the left trigger as I'm moving around, and I can keep shooting and keep using bombs. But I think I'm definitely finding now that I've played it more that I'm just sticking to the face buttons. It's not been too bad, but like I say, I've not played it with just the Joy-Cons on a TV. I've been using the Pro controller for that.
I've been meaning to pick up a Pro controller. I've been playing, I started off using the face buttons, but I found it easier to use the shoulder triggers, because I can just kind of leave my finger holding down the shoot. There's no reason never to be shooting in this game.
Always be shooting. Apart from have you seen the little there's like the little protoculture games, like a red logo will fly around sometimes, and I don't think you're meant to shoot them, but unfortunately every time I've seen them, because I'm just shooting the shit out of anything that's moving, I do end up shooting, and then it kind of makes a it's like, oh no, sort of thing. And I think that's an indication that you're not meant to shoot that. You're meant to have collected it or something. And I think that might be a key to unlocking something. But who knows? There's a lot of stuff still to unlock for me on this. So
yeah. Some of the unlocks are kind of cool. You can change the bullet colors. You could change them to pink or rainbow, or you can add some screen lines, scan lines. So there's some cool unlocks. I haven't gotten a ton of them, probably because I never noticed this this logo thing. I've just been shooting everything. So I do know that I picked up that, is it like a little golden ship type thing? And I think that's just like an extra life or something that you get.
Yeah, the one that as you pick it up, you get the pixel text that says extend when you've collected it. I think that's just an extra life.
How far have you gotten? So I have not gotten past stage 4 yet. I can only get to midway through stage 3 on super hard, and I never seem to get past the final boss on stage 4 on easy mode. So
for me, I think you've played it more than me. I'm in my general summer lull of gaming at the moment. I've got to the start of stage 3 on very hard, but I had so little continues left, or lives and continues, that I didn't last long in there. On easy, I've made it to stage 4 now. Probably, I can't remember whether I got to the midway boss or not, because each stage has a mid boss and then the final end boss. Yeah,
and those mid bosses are pretty hard too. You know,
yeah,
they're not. I would say they're sort of like a full level end boss.
Especially on very hard, I've ended up getting through them by sort of just basically having to spam all of the bombs that I've got left available to try and sort of deal with them as quickly as I can, and then sort of muddle through the rest of the stage without any bombs.
I hope there's some unlock for unlimited lives or unlimited continues. I'd like to look into that, because some of the older games you had unlimited continues, so you could just kind of die your way through the game to see the entire thing, or some of the arcade shooters, if you're prepared to spend $20 in quarters, you could make it to the end. I would love to see the end of this game. I just don't know if my skill set will allow me to get through it, because it does seem to ramp up from stage to stage. I don't see myself memorizing the patterns enough, or being able to really get much further with the amount that I've played, which would be unfortunate, because I would like to see the end of it. And maybe there's some purists out there that say, hey, that's cheating or whatever, but at the end of the day, I want to enjoy it too. I
don't think there's anything
see the end.
Wrong with that. I mean, there's always been like especially arcade conversions of shooters when they've come home, and they've had like free play options, so you can just grind your way through it. The problem with some of them though is that the more you die, like a lot of them, the more you die, the more you end up at the bottom power level every time you come back to life. Whereas this is interesting, because if you die enough to, each small life that you lose, drop down a power level of what your current weapon. But then when you lose all of your lives and have to continue, it picks up from where you were, but you get put to, I think, power level 2. But then it will spit out, the laser, the spread, and the homing missile orbs. And you can then collect them to tailor what you want at that point, but also build up a quick, extra power level. So it's kind of nice that you'll be on a boss and you might be really struggling, and then you end up continuing, and then it's like, here, it kind of throws you a bone and goes, all right, rather than R-Type or something, or Gradius, if you die just before the boss, you'd end up with fuck all, and then you're like, well, I've got no hope now. I was struggling against this stage fully powered up, but now I've gotten back at square one. What hope have I got? And you kind of walk away from it. But with this, it kind of throws you that little lifeline and goes, no, go on, keep going. You can do it, and it'll, you'll get through that boss, and then you're not quite as good as you'd want to be going into the next stage, because you've already used some continues up, but it sort of encourages you to carry on. But in terms of pattern recognition, I don't feel it's as bad. I don't know if it's because I went through a phase of, as everything went a bit more bullet hell and I kind of was trying to keep up with shooters, it was very much an element of like reading patterns and memorising stuff. I don't feel like this demands quite that level of you. I think it's just you get a feel for, alright, like the start of stage 2 in the Metropolis. Well, no, not the start. The start's fairly normal, but then it moves to this pit where it sort of alternates between, you'll have a couple of tanks going across the road along the bottom, and they're sort of they're quite a threat because they throw sort of almost like cluster bombs out at you, and so I feel like you end up sort of I need to focus on these for a bit, and then you have like a sine wave enemies come across the top that will drop stuff at you, so then you figure out that, okay, I need to go up the top for a bit and work on them, and then drop back and the tanks will come along, and it's kind of more of a feeling of less of like what patterns are coming, but more just like a general feel of, okay, I want to go high at the moment, I want to go low at the moment, and I think that sort of comes across with a lot of the bosses as well, is an element of you sort of get a feel for their behaviours, and you kind of like, oh, I need to get in right up close here because I'm going to avoid some missiles it's going to throw out, and then I want to back off after that and then be able to take care of some other attacks or avoid some other stuff, and then it's going to do a big screen laser across the middle, so I want to go high or low. It's kind of less about precisely knowing moment to moment I need to be in this position on the screen, and more kind of a general vague, okay, I want to be focusing on up high, I want to be focusing up low, certainly for me anyway. How much that changes going into stage 5 and 6 when things amp up, it will remain to see, I guess.
I don't know how I'm gonna get there. I guess just keep grinding. But it's one of those games where I've realized just to get that far, I have to make it through the first stage and a half without using a continue. It kind of builds upon itself because it does ramp up so much more in the end, and then that stage 3 where there's that mechanical dragon in the background that's kind of shooting from the background to the foreground, these cluster bombs, and then the wave of lasers. Early on, the boss of the first stage, he does this move where he kind of grinds his legs against the ceiling or the floor, and bits of junk kind of fly up, and just learning that pattern, like, okay, now I have to like swoop in really close to the eyeball and then avoid the laser. I guess eventually, playing enough, you'll start to realize their tells and how to move about the stage to avoid things, but it does become quite difficult. So, like I said, without there being some kind of free play or something, I think I've kind of hit the limit as far as what my skill set will be. The reflexes aren't quite as twitchy as they used to be, but yeah, overall, I mean, great game. I love it. I gotta knock it down a little bit because, like I said, I'd love to see the end of it, and I don't know if there's a way that I can do that at this point.
Yeah, I mean, for me at the moment, I feel like I'm making progress whenever I play it. I mean, there's a couple of full starts where I'll end up getting like 2 stupid deaths before the first mid boss, and then it's like, well, fuck this, I'm just gonna wipe and start again. But the more I'm playing it, the more. It used to be that I'd lose a couple of lives or continues even in that first stage, when I first was going through it. And now, the more I've run it, the more I can get through that now without doing it. And like the dragon in the background of stage 3, before I really figured out what was going on and what was a good way to avoid those attacks, I'd keep getting I'd lose loads of lives and get wiped on there, but now I've got used to it, I'm able to get through there a lot more comfortably. I might get a few hits on me, as I've just been trying to concentrate on other things. But I feel like, I'm making a bit of progress there where I'm starting to be able to run levels without needing to just like burn through a load of lives and things. But also it's kind of, I'm still in a stage where it sort of works on unlocks based on your cumulative score for how much you've played in total forever. So it's still, I don't know when it stops, but it's still been sort of trickling me, going, right, here's an extra continue. So with a combination of me being able to get through some stages cleaner than I used to be able to, but also I've got an extra continue in hand than I used to, I'm going to get a little bit further this time. whether I can keep that progression up, I will definitely be carrying on and finding out, and whether, once you've accrued 10 million points in total or whatever it goes, here you go, you've unlocked unlimited continues now, have a go at getting right to the end, because I don't see any reason why it's a bad thing if it did give you unlimited continues. There's still plenty of challenge there for people there's very hard for starters. There's a whole challenge mode which has, I think, about 24 little challenges, and there's 2 to start with unlocked, and they seem to be nails. And then also, people have, throughout the years, they've always set themselves challenges of right, well, I'm going to do a 1 credit completion. When the continue screen comes up, I won't continue. So you can self-impose, if you're getting that good at it, there's plenty of scope for giving yourself those limitations, even if they unlock free play unlimited continues for it. I think for me, I'm going to play it. If I was recommending it to friends, I think especially a lot of them are in a similar boat to me where, they've not kept on playing shooters. They like shooters, but, by no means are their skills as sharp as they used to be, or feel as though their skills are as sharp as they used to be. Probably was that I was no good at them back in the day either, but it just feels like I was better then, and I'm worse now. So I'd maybe say, maybe hold out for us, because a couple of guys have said, is it worth picking up? I'm like, maybe hold out for a little sale, 25-40% off. It'd certainly be well worth it then. But I guess even at $20, what's that? That's kind of 4 or 5 craft beers. That's one evening. You can burn through that, and even with my limited amount of playtime, I've burnt through more playtime than I beer would have lasted me at this point. So in terms of beer time to gameplay ratio, it's certainly holding value for me, I think.
Yeah, I think $20 if you're into shooters, I think that's a fair price for it. If you're not somebody that typically plays shooters, but you're looking to pick one up, I think it may be a little frustrating. You definitely have to put some work in to get better at it. If there's infinite continues, which admittedly I haven't looked to see how you unlock that, or if that's even an option. I feel like that would extend the gameplay for me, just to be able to kind of get through it a little bit more. But $20, I think if you're a shooter guy, it's definitely worth it. If not, if you're just maybe somewhat into shooters or casual shooter player, $20 might be a stretch, because it's a difficult game, and I don't know that you're going to get a whole lot of value just playing through the same 3 stages or so, maybe 2 stages, because I think the level of difficulty is certainly there, that you're not going to be able to get to see much of the game. So, depending on what your level of skill play is and how much time you're willing to put into it, I think is going to depend on the value that you'll find out of the game. But I feel like $20 is a fair price for it. If you could pick it up for 15 or 10, I'd say it's worthwhile picking up for the casual player. But if you're a shooter guy, $20, no brainer, go pick it up. A lot of fun. Yeah, and
if you are really into shooters, and as well as us, saying, there is plenty of challenge in it, there's also, we haven't really talked about the score mechanic, which I'm not thinking about that particularly, but you've got a combo meter that builds up, so obviously you want to keep the combo meter high to maximise the amount of score, and the available bombs you have, they're awarded every so much score that you get, but then the burst mode uses up like a level of combo, I think, a whole multiplier, but then depending on how much you absorb will sort of give you a refill of the combo, the combo meter back up, and so there's all sorts of trade-off and mechanics there to try and maximise the score. So even if you've got to the stage where you can ace going through it on very hard, there's still plenty of gameplay there. Like I said, there's the challenge mode as well, but then just playing the main game and just running it and going for high score challenges, I think if you're the person that is into that, then $20, 15 quid, they've put more than enough work into it to justify that cost, and there's plenty there to keep someone like that going.
Would you see our co-host playing this game at all?
I think they would, but I don't know how long maybe they'd stick with it. I can't remember how good Scott and Mike. So I know they like space shooters, but yeah, I can't remember how they sort of regard their skill at them these days. I don't think they'd be unhappy with, they wouldn't feel like they'd wasted the time having spent 5 to 10 hours trying to play it. I think they'd still get a rewarding experience out of it.
I think it would be a little tough for them, but you want to give it a final score number out of 10?
Scores, not sure how I feel about scores, but
thumbs up, thumbs down.
I mean, I'd certainly, I'd give it an overall thumbs up. I would recommend it. It's definitely, it'd be in the. It's a bit difficult. There's plenty of nice work put into it. It's a beautiful product. I think probably 8-ish out of 10 if you were giving it that. I'd knock it down a bit just on it being a little bit hard. But there's, as I say, there's plenty of content in it. The animation and everything, plenty of good quality work put into it. How about you?
Yeah, I agree. Giving something a number is always a little bit dubious, but I would definitely put it in above average for sure. Probably in that 8 range. Definitely thumbs up. Recommend it. Buy or don't buy. It would definitely be a buy. But yeah, it's hard. But that's kind of the nature of these games, right? I mean, you don't want something that's a complete cakewalk. It does ramp up there at the end, so. Hopefully there's some infinite continues that I'll unlock at some point so I can get to see the entire piece of work. But man, yeah, definitely hard. Not as insane as some of those bullet hell Japanese shooters that maybe want to snap a controller in half.
Yeah, and so and things. I mean, I think I'd play this over something like Ikaruga these days, because the whole kind of switching context between the black and white and absorbing and deflecting bullets and things and enemies, with the sort of bullet hell as well. It was, a lot of them got really, really complex, and it just got sort of too much. I like I don't want it super basic and super bare bones, just one weapon and no upgrade and just, enemies coming at you and you shooting them. I like enough sort of variety and choice to be able to make a difference in your gameplay. 3 different weapon types is completely fine for me. Just enough complexity there just to give you a feel like you've got a bit of strategy to think about, but not overwhelming you with all sorts of mechanics and having to. The bursting's good for getting out of trouble. There is an extra depth there in the scoring, but it's not you're not essential. It's not like you've got to learn when to use it, because there's times where you absolutely have to use it and it's part of the core thing. It's just there as a kind of a get out of jail sometimes and things like that, I think. So for me it hits a nice middle ground of complexity.
One other thing, I kind of knock it down a little bit, and this is just purely a personal preference. I enjoy the shooters where there's a little bit more option and variety as far as your weapon cache that you have to work with. As far as, I like the Gradius games where you can kind of choose different power-ups and how you can kind of stack those things together to come up with your own combination of weaponry. This one just sort of being 3 different shots that you can have, I feel is a little limited. Although I'll contradict myself and say when I do play Gradius, I've found a certain combination that works for me, and I generally always stick to that. It's rare that I would stray outside of it, and the only reason would be because my hand is forced and I don't have enough, bonus points to select the weapon that I do want. So I think people probably find what's comfortable for them and stick with it. This game, you're essentially kind of forced to use certain weapons at certain times. Like we talked about, going through those corridors and stuff where the shots from the spread or the laser aren't going to hit the enemies on the top and bottom, so you kind of have to go with the homing shot at one point. But yeah, maybe it would have been nice to have some other things to choose from, a little bit more variety to kind of feel what's comfortable for you or works in different situations. Not a huge deal.
Cool. So yeah, I think that's pretty much covered everything I want to talk about on it. Is there anything further you'd like to add?
No, check it. We recommend it. Devil Engine. If you guys pick it up, would love to hear your comments or feedbacks. Send us a note or post on the Facebook.
Yeah, or Discord or whatever, and yeah, get in touch with us, have a chat about it. We could even turn it into like a little game club. We can all chat about how shit we are at it, or you can berate us and tell us how shit we are because you're all amazing and you've got through it. But yeah, certainly, if this has interested you at all, check out some of there's plenty of YouTube videos now, and I'll try and put this up as well with a bunch of footage on our YouTube channel sometime after the show goes out. So you may have already seen be watching some footage of it, but yeah, check it out, see if it's something that looks good to you. And certainly, people like Scott that are like, there's no games on Switch, because there's no big games on Switch. There's all sorts of stuff worth playing on there. I've got another one to talk about, which is old now, but that's fine. It's not as old as our usual stuff.
Yeah, so we'll talk to you guys next month with some other new retro games.